Hello! This is a review lesson of your Go Math Workbook, Chapter 13, Verse 1. 4th grade, Chapter 13 Workbook, Lesson 1. Page 717 is where we are going to start. In this lesson, we're talking about perimeter. We're talking about rectangles and squares and the perimeter of those shapes. So, the essential question in this lesson is, how can you use a formula to find the perimeter of a rectangle? So later in the lesson, we're going to get to talking about formulas and what a formula is and how that works. So keep that in mind. That's kind of our destination, but we have to start first. We have to start and remember what perimeter actually is. So let's read the question and let's read the problem, the story problem before we get started. Julio is putting a stone border around his rectangular garden. The length of the garden is 7 feet. The width of the garden is 5 feet. How many feet of stone border does Julio need? So, Julio is putting a stone border around his, notice in this workbook, I have circled this word rectangular, around his rectangular garden. I circled that because that word rectangle is very important. As we think about a rectangle, we need to understand that a rectangle, as seen here, is a very special shape with very special rules. And these rules are non-negotiable. They don't go away. They don't change. A rectangle is always a rectangle, and a rectangle is only a rectangle if it follows these very specific rules. So, we have a rectangle here. A rectangle has 4 sides. We've talked about this in a prior lesson. A rectangle has 4 sides. A rectangle has 2 pairs of parallel lines. So here's one pair up and down. These lines are parallel to each other. Here's another pair up and above. These lines are parallel to each other as well. A rectangle also has 4 right angles. These 4 right angles are very important because if they're not right angles, then it's not a rectangle. It's some other sort of quadrilateral of some kind. If it doesn't have 4 right angles, then it's not a rectangle. And so what that means is that these lines are going to be the same length and these lines are going to be the same length. And obviously this is 7 and this is 5. So if this is 7, we know that this is also going to be 7 when you're talking about a rectangle. If this is 5, then we know that this is also going to be 5 when you're talking about a rectangle. That's why I had you circle that word rectangular, because it's so important to remember that. A rectangle has 4 right angles. Rectangles and squares are special, okay? And that's why we're going to be talking about only rectangles and squares in this lesson. So, back to Julio. He's got this garden. He needs a stone border. Perimeter. What is perimeter? We're talking about a rectangle. We kind of reminded ourselves what a rectangle was and why it's special. What is a rectangle? What is perimeter, Perimeter is the distance around a shape. So, however many feet, in this case, it takes to go around this shape, that is the perimeter. There's no overlapping, there are no gaps. It's just a straight line, 4 straight lines, I suppose, around this garden. And so, our book here presents to us 2 different strategies to accomplish this goal. In my classroom, I give you all the strategies, I teach you all the different ways, and then you get to choose which strategy you prefer. And so, let's get started. This is our first strategy, use addition. To use addition with the perimeter of a rectangle, you're simply going to add length plus width plus length. So you have length plus width plus length plus width, okay? You're just going around. So if this is 7 and 5, this is 7 and 5, 7 plus 5 plus 7 plus 5 equals, give me a minute to think. Hint, hint, I would add the 5s first because that's going to give you a 10, and that's super easy to work with. So, did you say 24? I hope you said 24 because that's the right answer. If you didn't say 24, think about what you did say and go back and think how you got what you got. And then think about what I said about adding the 5s first. Then think about how I got what I got. The answer is 24. The perimeter is 24 feet. The perimeter is 24 feet. Julio needs 24 feet of stone border. So, throughout this lesson, I recommend that you take screenshots because that's going to just give you some things to fall back on so you won't have to watch this video 20 times. Although you could, and it wouldn't make me sad. Okay. So, now let's go down. Okay, so we got Julio figured out. He needs 24 feet. Moving on. Another strategy you can use to find the perimeter of a rectangle is to do a formula. Now, what is a formula? A formula is a mathematical rule. You can use a formula to find perimeter. You can use a formula to find area. You can use a formula to find a great many things that you're going to learn more and more and more as you travel down your mathematical career. The perimeter of a rectangle can be found using the formula P equals 2 times L plus 2 times width. And what we're doing here is we're taking our knowledge of what we've learned earlier in the fourth grade with replacing letters with things. Notice how this has a lot of letters in it. P equals 2 times L. And this is a cursive L. Why do we use a cursive L? If I was in my class, I would have a bunch of kids raising their hands right now. They would say, because a regular L looks like the number 1. That's right. So we use a cursive L. 2 times L and 2 times W. And then we add those things together. Now it is important that you recall something that I taught my students earlier this year briefly. It is called the order of operations. What does that mean? The order of operations. What exactly does that mean? That means the order in which you complete a task in a mathematical equation. And so, if you recall this little silly word, PEMDAS. PEMDAS. For PEMDAS, if you recall, the word please, excuse, I hope you're saying this with me now, my dear Aunt Sally. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. Now, the P stands for please, the E stands for excuse, but what do these things stand for in math? What does this mean for math? Here we go. The P stands for parentheses. E stands for exponents. We'll talk about that in a later grade. M stands for multiplication. D is division. I'm running out of room. A is addition. And S is subtraction. You might take a screenshot here. Let me try to get it up there good for you. Woo, back up some. There you go. That's a good screenshot. This is the order of operations. This is the silly sentence that helps you remember it. And then it gives you the letter. You say, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. You put these letters here. And then that helps you remember parentheses, exponents, multiplication. And the reason that you need to know that is because for this formula, you have parentheses, you have multiplication, and you have addition. So here you have parentheses, you have multiplication, and you have addition. How do you know what to do first? Well, that's where the order of operations comes into play. You have to follow those order of operations. This is a formula. This is a mathematical rule. This always stands. You cannot go around this. You have to do it this way. So, we are going to take the length of the rectangle at the bottom of page 717, and we're going to put it into the formula. And so they've done that for you right here. They've taken so here's your 2 times length. They've taken the length 12 and put it in here. They've taken the width here, 8, and they've put it in here. Then they multiplied first. They went to the parentheses, and then they multiplied. 24, 16. And now they're going to add those things together. And that is how you use multiplication to find the perimeter of a rectangle. 2 times length plus 2 times width. So here it's 24 plus 16. What's your answer? 40 is your answer. Nicely done. 40 is your answer. Okay, now finding the perimeter of a square. The formula for the perimeter of a square here says 4 times one side. Why can't we do a square with 4 times one side? What is different between a square and a rectangle? I hope that as I'm talking and trying to stall and give you time to think, that you're thinking to yourself, well, a rectangle has 4 lines and 2 sets of parallel lines. A rectangle has right angles. The only difference between a square and a rectangle is that your square has 4 lines that are all the same length. Your square has 4 lines that are all the same length. And so with that, you can do 4 times that, because or you can add up 16 for it. You can do repeated addition if you want, or you can do 4 times 16. Anybody have their answer? If I was with you, you would say 64. 64 is your answer. Very good. Okay, turn your workbook over now to page 718. We're going to do one more, and then we're going to be done, and I'm going to set you loose to do the practice. Use a formula. We've been talking about this already. A formula is a mathematical rule. You can use a formula to find perimeter. So perimeter equals 2 times length and 2 times width. It doesn't matter for a rectangle. It doesn't matter if it's a square, because if you do 2 times length and your length is 16, and 2 times width and your length is 16, then you're still going to come to the same answer. So you can use the formula for a rectangle on a square, but you cannot use the formula for a square on a rectangle. Okay, so here in your book, it tells you very clearly what the length is and what the width is, okay? Here's your length and here's your width. So now it's going to have you plug in these numbers. So 2 times length, what number is our length? Use the description from the boxes. What number is our length? Our length number is 18. So we're going to put an 18 here on this line. Next, what's our width? Our width number is 14, and we have two sides that are 14, and we have 2 sides that are 18. So that's why we're doing 2 groups of 14. 18 and 14 go here. Now I need your answers. What's 2 times 18? 36. What is 2 times 14? 28. 36 plus 28 equals 64. The perimeter of the rectangle is 64. Now, the perimeter of the rectangle is, you cannot just write 64 on this line. That's not enough. The perimeter of the rectangle is not just a plain old 64. The perimeter of the rectangle is 64 meters. And you have to have that designation on there, because you could be talking about inches or feet or centimeters. I don't know. I need to know that you are following the box, you're following the measurement on the box, and that it says meters. So the answer, the perimeter of the rectangle is 64 meters. That is all of the lesson that I'm going to teach you today. And now on page 719 and 720 and 721 and 722, it's just practice. That's how math works. You listen to a lesson, and then I send you off and you practice, okay? If you are in my class, the lesson will be on thinkcentral.com. The 13.1 practice lesson will be there, and you can practice that there. Until next time, when we do lesson 13.2, I will see you later.